way. Now we have traveled around the world looking at South Korea, Taiwan, Mexico, Indonesia. Now we are coming back to Malaysia. Our friend Asru, he lost his job at Bank Islam for predicting a likely Pakatan Rakyat victory. Speaking in Singapore about Malaysia, and that still cost his job. Now anyway, he wouldn't have that. It wouldn't have that danger at all. Now he is a research consultant to our Institute Rakyat. So I would like now to invite him to share with us his view on Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, bonjour dan selamat sejahtera untuk semua. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank the three co-organizers of this two-leg forum, namely the Penang Institute, IRF and Institute Rakyat, for giving me the opportunity to become one of the speakers of this event. I hope there will be more such events in the future, in the not too distant future. And to start the ball rolling, I would like to go down the memory lane about two months ago and review my controversial forecast for the GE13 outcome made in Singapore on 10 January 2013, and also the basis of my forecast. Next. Okay, I said in Singapore that expectations for the outcome of GE13 have completely transformed for the following reasons. Number one, the unprecedented opposition victory on 8 March 2008 at the GE12. Number two, continued close cooperation of opposition parties post GE12, and that has led to the establishment of Pakatan Rakyat, and also success stories in some PR states. And to arrive at my conclusions, I said that I analysed current voter profile, past voting trends in all general elections, in particular the GE12, results of all 16 by-elections, results of Sarawak state elections in April 2011. Next. I also took stock of the feedback from ground visits to gauge the underlying voters' sentiment that I made myself. I identified election issues, local or national, that could affect voters' decisions. I also, and last but not least, I assessed possible voting patterns among wildcard groups, namely newly registered voters, young voters, urban voters, voters in Sabah and Sarawak, voters in Felda constituencies, and last but not least, the 17 marginal seats with majority less than 1,000 votes at GE12. And I also said that for the base case scenario to happen, the following conditional assumptions must be fulfilled. Number one, there should be only 2 cornet fights. Number two, 75 to 80% of overall national voter turnout. I also shared a conservative but realistic voting tendency by ethnic breakdown, 55 and 60% among Malays for Barisan Nasional, 20 to 25% among Chinese for Barisan Nasional, 45 and 50% among Indians for Barisan Nasional, and 60 to 65% among others for Barisan Nasional. And last but not least, electoral fraud cases must be limited to below 5% of total voter turnout. Without all these conditions, I said in Singapore that the base case scenario will not happen. Next. And these are my scenarios that I listed. Scenario number 1 is the scenario with moderate probability or best case scenario, narrow win for BN with 112 and 122 parliamentary seats, which means narrow loss for PR, and that means 7 states for BN. Scenario 2 with quite high probability or the base case scenario, narrow loss for BN with 97 to 107 parliamentary seats, which means narrow victory for PR and 5 states for BN. Scenario number 3 with low probability or the worst case scenario is a big loss for BN with 82 to 92 parliamentary seats, which means a big victory for PR and only 3 states for Barisan Nasional. But I said that scenario number 3 is very unlikely, so we don't have to waste our time on that. And scenario number one, we will remain status quo, so we don't have to waste our time delving on that. So that's why I focused on the second scenario, which is a narrow loss for BN but a narrow victory for PR, and that has landed me in hot soup. Okay, anyway, next. Okay, after my forecast, which riled up many quarters, and you know who, a couple of research outfits seem to have been warmed up to the possibility of a PR win, or at least a narrow BN win, such as recently Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Maybank Investment Research, Economist Intelligence Unit, and Merdeka Center for Opinion Research. Next. However, a PR victory is not free from issues. Okay, number 1, we can expect economic sabotage, resistance and non-cooperation by those in the business community and civil service aligned to the losing coalition. Number 2, perceptions of political instability, especially during the period of power transition. Concern number 3, there will be no assurance of continuity of government policies and guarantee of the sanctity of contracts, in particular related to lopsided concession agreements, and that is one of the major concerns of the business community. Number 4 is the absence of the unpopular GST, which I support very much, but there could be introduction of taxes and other measures deemed business unfriendly instead. And last but not least, there could be jittery reaction by financial markets, either in capital, foreign exchange and money markets. Next. Okay. After the GE13, we can expect some negative knee-jerk overreaction on the first day of trading due to fears over political instability, administrative uncertainties and policy inconsistency, short-term nervousness over power handover, perceived uptick in Malaysia's political risk, among others. And because of that, we may see increased volatility and sharp pullback in equity, bond and forex markets. The circuit breaker could be triggered in Bursa Malaysia, and there could be sudden spike in bond yields, and there could also be a slide in ringgit. And last but not least, there could be a surge in capital outflows for portfolio or direct investment purposes. Next. Nevertheless, I would argue that the downside risks post GE13 are rather limited. In fact, I don't rule out the possibility of no market sell-off or at least it will not be as bad as post GE12. There will not be circuit breaker in the KLCI, or we can perhaps expect even a mild positive reaction in the market. As opposed to the GE12 results, I think a narrow PR win is no longer a wild, crazy dream. That's my quote to Reuters about 2 months ago. And it has become even one of the possible scenarios for GE13 outcome among an increasing number of political and investment pundits. For example, the market seems to have priced in this possibility, given the erratic performance of the stock and forex markets ahead of a GE13 we have seen since early of this year. Movements of portfolio funds in a rotational fashion between the equity and fixed income markets could also suggest that the investment community has factored in this possibility. Next. And we have seen pre-GE13 portfolio capital outflows since late last year. And because of that, foreign shareholding in KLCI is at its lows, estimated to be around 20% currently. And as such, not much foreign funds left to trigger a foreign capital flight post GE13. What's wrong? And precedents from countries in the region, such as Indonesia in 1998 and the Philippines in 1986, where we have seen financial markets and the economy have returned to normalcy in less than 1 year and even hit new heights in less than 3 to 4 years. Next. There are some external factors that could also limit the downside. Number one, more conclusive signs of resumption of a global recovery expected in the second half, and that is good for the overall investor sentiment. Signs of resolution to the Eurozone crisis are also good. Improving global risk appetite, hence increased global capital flows, in particular portfolio funds in search of high yielding assets, and that will benefit Asia, including Malaysia. So with all the factors, I think the downside risk to the Malaysian financial markets and economy are rather limited. I can confidently say that our economy will not plunge into disaster, given its ability to absorb any short-term shocks related to regime change and political transition, thanks to the following factors. Number one, our underlying economic fundamentals have remained sound, robust, and resilient. We have a good track record of institutional strength and relative social political stability that should enable successful change of government and power transition. Number three, success stories of PR states, in particular Selangor and Penang, and also the endorsement from the Auditor General are proof of the PR federal government's competency and capability to govern. Last but not least, this is a French word, alternance politique, or change of political power, is a necessary condition and a norm in all real democracies, which consequently will reinforce the legitimacy of the constitution and citizen participation in political regimes. Next. And to deal with these concerns that I mentioned earlier, and also possible consequences, the new federal government, led by PR, I hope, will have to instill trust, will have to ensure a smooth transition process, will have to allay fears over any forms of uncertainty and instability, and build the confidence among the public at large, investors, and other stakeholders. The new government will also have to push for a visible and real change swiftly in a robust, intense and dynamic manner. It will have to undertake broad-based and sweeping economic, structural, institutional, political, social and law reforms as part of the reformist agenda. It has to highlight the importance of greater transparency, accountability, governance and integrity in all aspects. And last but not least, it has to ensure policy clarity and specify the priority of policy initiatives in the short, medium and long term. And I included here the list of major stakeholders that I think the new federal government has to engage constantly and communicate regularly post GE13. Number 1, the public in general. Number 2, the media. Number 3, the administrative civil servants. Number 4, doctors, nurses and other medical professionals. Number 5, teachers, lecturers and other teaching professionals. Number 6, the armed forces. Next, the business and investment community, the new opposition coalition, professional bodies, industrial association, members of think tanks and intellectual circles, civil society and NGOs, religious leaders of all faiths, the diplomatic community, the arts community, and last but not least, the marginalized, the underprivileged and minority groups. Next. For the short term, or more specifically within 100 days in power, in my view, the new government must look for low-hanging fruits or measures that cost virtually nothing, financially speaking. Among the potential one-off feel-good measures that can be considered for immediate announcement: reduction in prices of RON 97 and diesel. This is the commitment made by the PR leadership, so I think this will happen. Number 2, public holiday on the first working day after the GE13 results are out. This would be good. Number 3, liberation of political prisoners. And I was toying with the idea of putting in a recommendation to reduce the all traffic-related summonses to 10 ringgit that we can pay within one month or 2 months, but I didn't put it here. Okay, and other measures within 100 days include measures to manage the civil service through a series of meetings between the new government leadership and top echelon civil servants. Number 2, stationing from the beginning trustworthy, able, efficient and intelligent reps at all ministries, government agencies throughout the nation. And number 3, a series of taklimat or town hall sessions for all civil servants, just to assure them of their job security and better off situation with the new federal government. The new government should also review the role of the media as the shaper of public opinion by engaging with the mainstream and alternative media. Next. The new government should also update targeted groups on the new government's public policies to build their confidence in the new government through periodic joint or separate briefing sessions for the investment community, the corporate world and the diplomatic community. We should perhaps consider establishing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, institutional reforms for the 3 branches of power, to begin with the judiciary reforms, parliamentary reforms with the establishment of more permanent parliamentary committees with adequate budget allocations for research, cabinet reforms which may include right-sizing the number of ministries from 30 currently, limiting to 2 terms a person who holds the position as PM, limiting to only 1 key cabinet portfolio a minister can hold. Nobody can hold more than 1. Okay. Sweeping electoral reforms, including a revamp of the EC to ensure free and fair election and to allow elections for local authorities for decentralization. Next, review and fine-tuning of repressive legislation such as SOSMA, Sedition Act, Printing Presses and Publications Act, Whistleblower Protection Act, University UUCA, and many others to ensure media freedom, academic freedom, freedom of association, freedom of speech, etc. And a slew of measures to exterminate systemic corruption in society, abuse of power and other forms of abuse through a revamp of the government's procurement policy and award system of all government contracts, revamp and empowerment of the MACC, establishment of the IPMCA, funding reforms for legitimate political parties, but I'm not sure whether political party would agree to this or not. Okay. Next, in the medium, what I mentioned just now was for the 100 days, within the 100 days. Now, in the medium to long term, we need more meaningful economic policies with far-reaching implications once the new government has at its disposal sufficient and reliable data and information to push for these policies. Policy number one is to liberalize the economy with the basic principle of pro-business and market-friendly policies, but without imposing hardship on the people. To improve the well-being of the people by raising the minimum household income to levels deemed adequate to meet the basic needs of all household members. And we know for a fact that the PR manifesto has set 4,000 ringgit as the minimum household income, and to also close the wealth and income gaps, to provide conducive environment for businesses to thrive, to make Malaysia a competitive and viable investment destination by implementing all the measures here. Make adjustments to the affirmative action and welfare programs to avoid NEP shortcomings and abuses, with transformation to a needs-based, merit-based and adequately market-oriented approach instead of race-based and elite group-based. Next. To move towards an economic structure that is based on innovation, creativity and productivity, and the one that emphasizes on SMEs and small businesses as major growth drivers, and the increasing role of businesses in creating high-paying jobs to help right-size the civil service. To redefine the government intervention in the economic and business sphere. To undertake budget consolidation measures, prioritization and rationalization of government spending, and also fiscal reforms, to have a balanced federal government budget according to the PR manifesto. I'm not sure whether it has in a manifesto, I'm sorry, but we want to have a balanced budget soon. To eliminate prejudice, discrimination, injustice, racism and oppression in all forms, to ensure justice, equality of opportunities and human dignity for all. Next. To push for sustainable development, and if carried out properly and effectively, I believe all these programs and measures should help to raise our long-run growth trend to around 7% from below 6% at present, to achieve a balanced budget by 2017 or 2018, to achieve a more balanced economic development geographically and fairer redistribution of wealth or prosperity, to uplift the bottom 40%, and to ensure higher sovereign credit ratings and lower long-term risk premium assigned to Malaysia. Next. this is my last slide. Given the anticipated narrow PR win, the presence of relatively strong opposition in the parliament should help strengthen the democratic process with the following outcome. The PR federal government will be always disposed to prove that it can strike the balancing act between meeting the aspirations of the people and the needs of the business or investing community. A well-functioning and genuine check and balance system to protect the rights of all citizens. There will be no revisions to the federal constitution at whims and fancies without a supermajority of 2/3. The emergence of a genuine two-coalition system. Perhaps we may see higher quality debates in the parliament and state assemblies. That still has to be seen. And perhaps more freedom for members of parliament and state reps to vote based on their wisdom or the feedback from the people, and not to the party line all the time. And with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. It almost sounds like manifesto. So whenever you do not find that in the Pakatan Rakyat Manifesto for the 13th general election, look out for it in the 14th one. So this is a preview. Now, we have gone through, very interesting views from three different panelists that Professor Wu has brought us going around the world, from Eastern Europe to East Asia to Mexico. Professor Anwar Nasution brought us to review macroeconomic policies in Indonesia, and Saudara Asru drew a picture and say why this is possible and why you shouldn't have to be worried and so on. So if you have fear earlier about that, whether transition will be smooth and so on, Professor Wu reminded us and say, what you really need sometimes is a bit of distraction, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to change. Now, what Asru has just basically covered is to reassure us and say, even with that kind of destruction, you don't expect tremendous fluctuation in the market. Now, I know there are always people who would not, who always would still ask that question and say, is it real? Okay, now this is the time, we have about 45 minutes. I would invite you to, to take the mic. Please do introduce yourself, where you are from, and to whom your questions is addressed to. You can ask any or all of them.